You remember her hands not for how they held, but how they trembled when they didn't have something to fix. A woman in a quiet room becomes a question mark. She says she wants peace, but her breath quickens when it arrives, like a creature sensing the predator it once mated with. You've seen her eyes go distant when everything is finally calm, not in relief, but in mourning, and you wonder what is she grieving when nothing has gone wrong. There's a silence that chokes her, and you've heard it too. It comes after the apology, after the kindness, after the man has emptied his weapons and placed them gently at her feet, and still she searches the walls for war. Still she folds the napkin like a wound. Still she waits for the scream that would prove she exists. Peace, for her, is a mirror, and in it she sees no reflection. You offer safety, but she flinches. You offer stillness, and she stirs the air, not because she hates you, because she was never taught how to survive without drama, because without chaos, she forgets who she was taught to be. And when you leave, she finally sleeps. You thought she longed for stillness, but what she craved was containment, a storm wrapped in velvet, a boundary just strong enough for her to press against, so she could feel the shape of herself. You brought her peace and unknowingly dismantled her structure. She did not know how to bloom without wind. You sat beside her in silence, and she panicked, because silence, to her, has always meant danger, not comfort. The calm before the slap, the quiet after a slammed door. Peace was never neutral in her body. It always wore the scent of something withheld. She tells you she wants a garden. She buys books about grounding. She writes affirmations in gold ink. But the moment you stop fighting, the vines begin to rot. She forgets to water what she asked for, because she does not want serenity. She wants a man who threatens to leave. She wants a love she must earn. She wants conflict, a ritual of withdrawal and return, a cycle where her anxiety becomes proof that something is happening. In peace, nothing happens. And so she makes something happen to feel alive. You saw it in her eyes. That flicker of disappointment when you said, "I'm not going anywhere." She smiled. Yes, but her breath got shallow, her body tensing in the silence, her mind already spinning ways to test the certainty of your promise, not because she wants to destroy you, but because she does not believe you, not truly, not in the fibers of her flesh. You told her, "You're safe now," but her nervous system has lived too long under siege to believe a ceasefire is real. She grew up in a house where love had a temperature, too hot or too cold, never just right. And now, when the room is temperate, she opens a window to make herself shiver. You think she's ungrateful. She thinks she's unloved, because in her logic, love is intensity, and the absence of drama feels like the absence of meaning. So she picks a fight, a strange one, about nothing. A tone in your voice, a delay in your reply, a dream she had in which you betrayed her, and when you react, finally, her heart calms. Not because you hurt her, but because you reappeared. Your anger proves your presence. Your outrage proves she matters. A man who stays calm when accused feels to her like a man who doesn't care. You, the one who offered peace, are now the villain. You don't raise your voice. You don't slam the door. You just won't dance her dance. And that terrifies her, because now she must face herself. Now she must ask, who am I, if not chasing someone's attention? You become the mirror, and she throws a stone at it. You tell her, "I'm not your father," but her body doesn't know that. It responds to you like it's 5 years old again. Peace feels like abandonment. Affection without pain feels counterfeit. You bring flowers, and she wonders what you're hiding. You offer kindness, and she prepares for the withdrawal. You're not loving her the way she understands love, and so, in her mind, you're not loving her at all. It is not rational, it is not fair, but it is real. She is haunted by an unconscious script, and you have wandered onto her stage without knowing the play. She will provoke you so you can play your part, and when you refuse, when you stay calm, stay grounded, stay open, she does not feel relief. She feels alone, because now the only chaos in the room is her own, and it's deafening. You watch her begin to wither in the garden she once begged you to plant. She stops touching you, stops looking at you, not because she stopped loving you, but because loving you is now too quiet. Her heart only knows how to love in the storm. You have become invisible to her, not for lack of effort, but for lack of conflict. And still you try. You water the soil, you listen, you speak softly, you offer everything she once said she wanted, but she forgets. Not just forgets, abandons. She turns from the life she begged for because it arrived too gently. No trumpet, no crash, just a hand, extended in peace. She cannot hold it, and yet this is not her failure alone. This is the inheritance, the psychic residue of women who survived by dramatizing pain. Her mother, who cried in the kitchen to be heard. Her grandmother, who endured violence to feel chosen. Her lineage speaks through her in ways she cannot name. And you, the man, become the screen on which centuries of unspeakable tension is projected. You ask her, "Why are you doing this?" And she cannot answer, because she does not know. Her conscious mind believes she wants love. Her unconscious knows she wants repetition. She doesn't sabotage joy, she protects herself from its collapse. In her world, safety is a setup, intimacy is bait. So she attacks before she is abandoned, withdraws before she is betrayed, fights before she is forgotten. And now you are here, confused, exhausted, wondering how offering peace made you the enemy. And here lies the secret: peace makes her responsible. When there is no chaos to blame, she must face her own shadow, her own projections, her own role. And this is more terrifying than any fight. She once told you, "I just want to be happy." But happiness demands presence. Peace requires surrender. And she only knows how to grip, to hold, to control, to shape the emotional weather so it matches the storm inside. In your calmness, she sees herself raw, unprotected, vulnerable, and so she rages, not at you, but at the unbearable stillness you've made visible. And here, perhaps, is where you begin to disappear. Not physically, not even emotionally, but psychically. She stops needing you because she cannot use you. And in a love defined by friction, uselessness is death. You offered her heaven, but she needs a battlefield, and without an enemy, she forgets she's alive. So she forgets the garden, lets the petals fall, waters the weeds. And when you ask her why, she says she doesn't know, and she means it, because the peace you offered wasn't peace to her, it was silence. And silence is the one thing she was never taught how to survive. She will say you were too calm, too passive, too soft. But what she really means is, you didn't give me enough pain to believe in this. You didn't make her earn your love through suffering. You didn't prove yourself through war. And so she doubts the truth of your peace, because it arrived without a price. You remain, and she drifts, not because she wants to, but because she must. Her nervous system chooses familiarity over safety. She longs for calm, yes, but only the kind that comes after the hurricane, not the stillness that just is. You, the man who brought peace, will not be remembered as kind. You will be remembered as nothing, a blur, a gap, a blank page where the drama didn't write itself. And this is the tragedy. You were never real to her unless you hurt her. And she was never real to herself unless she was hurting. You thought her longing was for touch, for closeness, for the shelter of arms that held without threat, but beneath the softness was something colder, a hunger not for love but for fusion, not connection but consumption. Her desire does not end in embrace, it circles back, it swallows what it reaches. You mistook her reach for need, but she was testing how much of you she could dissolve. She does not want a man. She wants the feeling of being absorbed. And she cannot admit it because even she does not understand the shape of this desire that loops back into the self. She confuses possession with security. When you offer your heart, she takes your spine. When you offer truth, she pulls your voice, not maliciously, instinctively. Love, to her, is not coexistence. It is merger, and merger, to her, means control. She wants your soul inside hers, but only so she can command the pieces. You thought you were making love, but you were being harvested. She plants her need in you like a seed and waits for the sprouting of obedience. You notice it early, the small edits to your speech, the pauses when you speak freely, the shrinking of your laughter in her presence. You think you're adapting, being considerate, but it's already begun the slow erasure. You adjust your desires to avoid her withdrawal. You tailor your tone to soften her moods. You become palatable. And each time you bend, she moves the line. Not to test you, but to protect herself from ever needing to be vulnerable. Because this is the paradox: she fears abandonment more than death. And yet she will create the very conditions that guarantee it. Her unconscious believes that to desire you is to give up power, so she flips it. She makes you desire her, crave her, chase her, and when you finally do, when you're kneeling inside the cathedral of her praise, she punishes you for the weakness of loving her too much. She builds the trap, walks you into it, then mocks your imprisonment. You try to explain, you try to reason, but she's already sealed the chamber. Your confusion becomes her triumph. She does not want to understand. She wants to win. Because peace makes her feel exposed, but power makes her feel invisible and invincible. She's not playing for love. She's playing not to be left. You ask her what she wants, and she says honesty. But what she means is obedience disguised as confession. She wants your truth, but only if it confirms her fantasy. Anything outside her script is betrayal. Anything that reminds her you are not fully hers is perceived as abandonment. You are allowed your past, but only if she can narrate it. You are allowed your dreams, but only if they orbit her. She watches your eyes, tracks your mood, learns your patterns. Not out of care, but out of strategy. She must know your inner world to anticipate any escape. She must preempt every crack in your devotion, because if you truly become separate, if you remain autonomous, she cannot trust you. She cannot own you, and to not own you is to risk you choosing another path, a freer path, a path where she is not necessary. This is her dread. That she could be unneeded, not because she wants to serve, but because she believes need equals security. So she cultivates it in you, not love, need. A soft dependency where you feel guilty for upsetting her, where your moods revolve around hers, where your emotional state begins to reflect her expectations. And once you need her, once you truly depend on her affection, she grows restless. Because now, the power is hers, and power, once secured, is not thrilling, it is boring. You sense the shift. She no longer reaches for you, no longer laughs at your jokes. The warmth that once poured from her has turned to calculation. You think something is wrong, but to her, this is right. She feels safe now, because you are fully inside her world, and she no longer needs to chase. Now, she can judge, she can test. She can remind you of how much you owe her. The same arms that once welcomed now become a noose. But do not mistake this for hatred. She does not hate you. She hates that she cannot trust what she desires. Her body wants softness. Her psyche demands control. She is torn between surrender and dominance, between the wish to be held and the terror of being helpless. So she becomes the mother, the devourer. She offers you comfort, but it is laced with regression. She wants you small, dependent, grateful, and when you resist, when you assert the fullness of your own desire, she feels betrayed. How dare you not be content in her cradle? How dare you have your own gravity, your own flame? She once loved your ambition. Now it feels like treason. She once admired your freedom, now it feels like escape. She once loved the fire in your eyes, now she tries to dim it, lest it set her fantasy ablaze. You try to speak, but she corrects. You try to explain, but she reframes. And slowly, the gap grows. Not in words, but in energy. You feel her begin to narrate you, sculpt you, interpret you until you are no longer present in the relationship. Only her version of you is. The image she built to soothe her fear. The puppet she controls to avoid her own collapse. And yet, she will tell her friends that you have changed, that you pulled away, that you stopped being the man she once loved. But she forgets the man she loved was free, and freedom does not survive beneath surveillance. Desire cannot breathe under manipulation, and peace cannot grow in a womb that devours everything it births. You begin to decay in her love, not because she stops giving, but because what she gives now poisons. Sweetness with a hook, praise with a warning, touch with a condition. You must earn every moment, and even when you do, she withholds just enough to keep you chasing. You become her mirror, and she smashes you for what she sees. Not because you betrayed her, but because you reminded her of the part of herself she cannot control. Her own desire, her own longing, her own ache to be loved without playing God. And when you finally leave, when you crawl out of the womb she disguised as love, she will say you couldn't handle her depth, that you were weak, that you didn't want a real woman. But deep down, in the chambers she won't speak of, she will mourn, not you, but the version of herself she almost let exist. She was once a girl who wanted to be touched and trusted and told you don't have to earn anything. But that girl was buried under generations of survival, under mothers who said never need a man, under fathers who said never trust a man, under her own choices, shaped not by freedom, but by fear dressed as power. So she built a kingdom where men kneel, where peace is punished, where love is a leash. And then she wonders why she's lonely. But it was never about love. It was about control. And the womb she built to protect herself became the tomb where all her desires went to die. You stand before her now, not as a man, but as a question, not asked, but accused. You have become the silence that screams louder than her words. She looks at you with eyes that search not for truth, but for weakness. Because she does not want to be understood, she wants to be right. Her gaze is not a bridge, it is a blade. And you, who once came to love, now kneel in a courtroom built from her fears. You are not allowed your innocence, only your guilt. She makes you confess things you never did, feel shame for thoughts you never had. And you do it not because you are weak, but because you believe that maybe, just maybe, surrender will bring back the woman you first met. But she is no longer here, or rather, she was never here. She was always waiting to become the mirror that turns your love into proof of your failure. The gentler you become, the more she resents you. You give her your softness and she spits it back, not out of cruelty, but but because your softness feels like her own shame. She wanted to be loved without being exposed, but your peace reveals what she has buried. And so, she lashes out not to wound, but to erase the reflection you've become. You ask her, "What did I do?" And she replies, "You didn't fight hard enough." She means it. She equates chaos with care. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't threaten to leave. You didn't make her feel the risk of loss, so she feels nothing. Now, she begins to shape you in her image. A man who apologizes before he speaks. A man who hesitates before he acts. A man who orbits her needs like a ghost afraid to disturb her air. You call it compromise, but it is transformation not of growth, but of disappearance. Your spine bends. Your gaze dims. Your instincts rot beneath the weight of constant calibration. You stop being a man and become a mirror, always reflecting, never resisting. And she grows bored. Boredom, for her, is the first sign of your obedience. When you no longer surprise her, when you no longer resist her, when you finally surrender completely, she loses interest. Because now, you are hers. And what is hers, she no longer desires. You mistake this for detachment, but it is conquest. You are the empire she has finally colonized. And now she looks outward again. Not necessarily for another man, but for another battle. Another self to dominate. Another story where she is both the victim and the god. You begin to beg, not with words, but with silence, with glances, with absences. You try to summon her affection without demanding it. You become careful, you become small. You hope your restraint will rekindle her care, but she only sees your hesitation and loathes it. You've become what she secretly fears a man she can predict. And in her world, predictability is death, not safety, not loyalty, just death. She claims she wants truth, but when you offer it, she flinches, because truth from a man is a boundary, and boundaries make her feel alone. You say no, and suddenly you are selfish. You say yes, and suddenly you are spineless. There is no answer that doesn't echo her wound. No version of you that does not trigger a ghost in her history. You once had dreams. Now you ask her permission to want. You once had convictions. Now you double-check your tone before you speak. You once stood tall in your choices. Now you question every word, every silence, every breath. Not because she demanded it, but because she trained you to fear disapproval dressed as love. And the worst part is you trained yourself to find pleasure in it. Yes, pleasure, because somewhere deep in you, her punishments began to feel like a tension. Her withdrawal became the rhythm of your nervous system. Her approval, a scarce drug. And now you chase it like a starving dog waiting at a locked door. You think you love her, but love does not hollow the soul. Love does not whisper stay while slowly pulling out your tongue. You stopped looking at other women, not from loyalty, but because desire itself now feels like a betrayal. Not to her, but to your own programming. She has rewired your hunger to serve her image. You've forgotten what it feels like to want for yourself. Your instincts were not killed, they were redirected. Now, every desire you have must pass through her approval, like a priest inspecting sins. And when she sees you still flicker with independence, she doubles down. She calls you distant, cold, detached, and perhaps you are, but only because you've been trained to be a shadow, and even shadows rebel in silence. She accuses you of not loving her like you used to, but she forgets you are no longer the man she used to love. That man has been buried beneath years of appeasement. What remains is not a partner, but a projection, a shape she molded, but now resents. You wonder if you're crazy, if perhaps you're too sensitive, if maybe this is just what women are. But you know better. You remember how you used to laugh without checking her face. how you used to speak without pausing to hear the echo of her disappointment. You remember being alive and now you feel managed, controlled, curated. This is not love, it is training, conditioning, domestication. And yet, you stay, because leaving means failing, and failing means admitting that her love could ever be wrong. So you justify, you spiritualize, you tell yourself you are learning patience, but what you are really learning is self-erasure, the art of disappearing so slowly you don't notice until you've forgotten your own name. And even now, even in the depth of your awareness, you crave her hand, you crave her approval, you crave the flash of warmth she gives after weeks of coldness. You are addicted to the reward. The moment she smiles again, touches your shoulder, calls you hers, and in that moment, you forget the months of absence, the nights of manipulation, the mornings of dread. You forget because the hit is so sweet, but it does not last. It never lasts, because it was never love. It was never healing. It was never peace. It was always control. And the moment you show signs of strength, real strength, she pulls away, not out of fear, but out of habit, because power, to her, is a zero-sum game. If you rise, she must fall, and she will not fall again. So she holds the mirror, makes you watch yourself become less. And when you finally crack, when you finally break, she will call you unstable. She will say, "See, I knew you were weak." Not because she wants to hurt you, but because her entire identity depends on you not standing tall again. You, who once offered peace, now beg for war. Because war was intimacy, war was engagement, war was proof. And now you sit in the quiet, a good man, a loyal man, a hollow man waiting for her to love you again. But she never stopped loving you, she just stopped needing you. And in her mind, love without need is death. And so you beg, not with your voice, but with your stillness, with your resignation, with your final, breathless hope that the mirror might someday show a man again. She will not remember your kindness. She will remember the moments you disappeared, the days you did not fight, the peace that felt like betrayal. You left no wounds, and that, to her, is the deepest cut. The absence of chaos made her question her own story, and so she chose another ending, a louder one, a war-shaped one. But you were never meant to be the storm. You were the stillness that terrified her. And in that stillness, she saw herself too clearly. So she broke the mirror. And all that's left now is a silence that knows your name.